Welcome to Garden Delights. I'm Susan Howington, Family Consumer Science Agent with the Henry County Cooperative Extension, partnership with the University of Georgia. We have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about cranberries. We're also going to be talking about pecans, and Frank's going to be out in the field talking about those pecan trees. And hopefully you're going to like the recipe we have today. It's called Cranberry Pecan Pie. We're going to see you back in just a little bit and talk more about those cranberries. We're going to be talking about cranberries today, and I hope you're going to like the recipe that we'll make toward the end of the program. It's called Cranberry Pecan Pie. And let's talk a little bit about these cranberries. You know, cranberries are in season right now. So between October and December, as I always say, buy in season. That's the best time to buy your fruit. This is about a cup of cranberries right here, but just to give you an estimate about calories, about a half a cup equals about 27 calories, and this is a cup. So as you can see, if you want to pop one of these in your mouth, these would be really low in calories. Cranberries are also sodium-free, cholesterol-free. They are also saturated fat-free. All these are good things that we can think about as far as good sources for these cranberries. Also, they are very, very high in antioxidants. We always think about our blueberries, but the cranberries are right up there with those blueberries. As far as the storage, you want to make sure when you buy your cranberries that you are looking at shiny cranberries that are plump. They don't have any decay, no dryness, because if you see that, that means more than likely these are getting ready to go bad. Now, once you select your cranberries at the grocery store, you will bring them home, and they definitely have to go to the refrigerator. If you leave them out, that's when they could start decaying. So we definitely want to put our cranberries into the refrigerator. And they will store about a week in the refrigerator. If you haven't decided what you want to do in that week, you need to freeze those cranberries. And cranberries freeze very well. They're just like the blueberries. They freeze well. You can even put them on a cookie sheet, something flat if you want to, and freeze them first. But you know, cranberries are very plump, and they're not soft unless they're going bad, so you don't really have to, but you can put them on a cookie sheet and freeze them a little bit, and then put them into your Ziploc container, freezer bags, or whatever container you're going to use for the freezer. And then you can keep them and freeze them. So if you're buying in season, you get a really good price, then you may want to think about freezing those if you don't have something ready for those. Now, they are also really good as far as eating them by themselves, or in the season we think about for holidays is cranberry sauce, chutney, different things that we can do in our cakes, our pies, cookies. So cranberries are something that we can add, that fruit, to whatever we're making. Not only that, but what makes it even better is you can just plump them on top of a salad and eat them fresh with a salad. So cranberries are something really good for us. They also have a chemical substance in those cranberries that are very good because they say it can prevent cavities in our teeth. So we really want to think about putting those cranberries on our list. When you're looking for those cranberries in the bag at the grocery store, make sure that you're looking at the bag in the front part of it, flip it over and look at the back side of it, because you want to make sure those cranberries are fresh all the way through that bag, because sometimes they'll get stacked on the top of each other, and that keeps the air from flowing through the cranberry, and it can decay it. So I just want to make sure that you really pay attention to your bags. Not only that, but once you bring these cranberries home, whatever you're going to do with them, if you're going to eat them just like they are, make sure you wash them. I know they're in a bag, but they're still going to tell you have to wash your berries before you eat them. So just make sure that you're washing your berries before you put them in a recipe or eating them just as they are. We'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights. We're going to be making that cranberry pecan pie.
Today we're going to talk about pecans. Now, after a while, Susan Howington might talk to you about pecans, but where I come from, they were pecans, and so I'll tell you about pecans, she can tell you about pecans. I kind of grew up with my mama cooking with pecans, and my daddy, that was his pastime in the wintertime. He'd sit around and pick them. and he had a couple of trees in his yard, and that was his pastime. He'd sit there and watch a ball game and pick pecans or pecans, and if you wanted to learn about it, all you had to do was walk by and get one that he had picked out of his bucket, and you would learn right quick that if you're old enough to eat them, you're old enough to pick your own. So that was kind of how we grew up with them. I get a lot of calls from homeowners that have a tree in their yard, and the biggest problem with the home orchard is the fact that we can't spray them, we can't do much to them, and so the diseases and the things that get on them, there's not much I can do for them, so they're just sort of at the mercy of Mother Nature as to whether they have any pecans or not. So today we want to talk a little bit about, if you're thinking about establishing some trees, we'll just talk about what you need to be looking for. And obviously, disease resistant is going to be one of the things that you look for. Pecan scab is a big problem. So if you're planning on planting a pecan tree, you need to get a variety that is scab resistant. There are several of them. And that's your most important thing, is to get a tree that you don't have to spray. A lot of your good quality pecans that are grown in orchards, there's a spray schedule going on. They're spraying those things 7 or 8 times a year with a big jet sprayer that nobody around here has, so that's not a capability. So we want to look for a tree that makes us a nice shade tree that provides us a few nuts that we can have every year. Obviously, if you're trying to grow some of these better quality nuts that you see in the store and you don't have any spray equipment, then you're not going to be successful at doing it. There's just no way to do that. So some of the varieties, the University of Georgia's got some pretty good brochures on growing pecans. Some of the varieties that are recommended for homeowner backyard growers. Amling is one of them that's very scab resistant. Disadvantages of amling is the fact that it makes a little bit smaller nut. It doesn't tend to overproduce. Pecans tend to be alternate bearing. Some of them, that's a problem, that they bear real heavy one year and then the next year they don't. I mentioned the amling. It is a light bearing tree, so it doesn't overload itself. Sometimes when they overload themselves, they deplete the carbohydrates that they need for the next year to produce a crop. Sometimes they damage the bloom for next year, and so they tend to grow alternately. They have a heavy crop one year and not so much the next year. The amling doesn't really do that. It has a reasonable crop every year. Pecan trees are not necessarily self-pollinating, but they do have the male pollen and the female bloom on each tree. The problem is they are classified as type 1 and type 2. Type 1 drops the pollen a little bit before the bloom is ready to accept it, and type 2 drops the pollen a little bit after the bloom, a little bit late. So you need to get a couple of varieties that are compatible with each other, that also are disease resistant. University of Georgia's got a good chart that shows which ones pollinate each other. That's a consideration that you need to keep in mind in the pollination. So they'll pollinate, the recommendation is not to have them more than 150 feet apart. They're pollinated by air. If they get too far apart, then they're not going to pollinate each other. So that's the guideline for that, is you need more than one variety, and you need to select the varieties that are compatible with each other and scab resistant, so you don't have to have some kind of spray program going on to grow them. Other things that you run into in addition to the scab, Phloxeria is an insect that gets on the pecan tree. They hatch out right at the first bud break. They get into the new leaves, and they form a gall. And this gall makes the leaf look really gnarly. It doesn't happen every year. So the same, just because a tree has a lot of it one year doesn't mean they're gonna come back the next. I've looked at a lot of people's trees that 3 years ago looked like they were all falling apart because of it, but the last couple of years haven't had any at all. So that's a disease or an insect problem. And if you don't have the capability of spraying the trees, there's not much you can do. Once you see the galls, it's too late. You have to spray early in the season to try to control that. I guess you could get you some liquid 7 that screws on the garden hose and try to spray right there when they first start to put out leaves. That's just a little bit of information. The main thing is to select you some plants that are capable of growing. Most of your quality pecans, they are grafted seedlings. This tree behind me right here is a seedling tree, and it is putting out nuts every year. The nuts are good, they taste good, but the nuts are very small. Now, it's a little early. These nuts the shuck hadn't opened on them, so they're not ready to fall out, but it produces a small pecan. But of the 15 or 20 trees that are surrounding us here, it is the only one that is producing this year, because the rest of them had a heavy crop last year, and so they were working in the alternate season. This is an off season for them, and you can hardly find another nut anywhere in this little orchard. So that's why we want to select the ones that are compatible with our backyard growing, and there are several that do that, and we can sit down and talk about that and select you the right variety for what you're trying to do, and get you where you need to think about it in the backyard as having a really nice shade tree, which the ambling that we talked about is a really nice shade tree that produces you a few nuts every year, and not get into the ones that require some heavy maintenance. Now, the trees do need to be fertilized every year, and a lot of people that have trees that they're trying to produce nuts on do not fertilize them. You need to have about 7 to 15 inches of new growth on the tree that's going to produce nuts every year, and you do that with your fertilizer program. Anything less than that 7 inches is not going to produce many nuts, and if you've got it where it runs way out over that 17 inches of growth, it's not going to produce a lot of nuts. So that's something you control with your fertilizer program. You need to soil test, see what the nutrient levels are. You can also do some leaf analysis in season there, where you can see exactly what the fertilizer needs are. Pecan trees also need zinc. The way you would fertilize the tree is you would do a soil test, and that'll tell you exactly what to do. But if you don't do that, then you measure up on the tree about 4.5 feet, which is going to be about chest high. Measure the diameter of the tree and put about 4 pounds of 10-10-10 down per inch of diameter at that 4.5 foot height. And then on a mature tree, maybe 3 to 5 pounds of zinc sulfate around the tree to add some zinc to it. You'll get a lot of calls. Most of the calls I get from people that are unhappy with their backyard pecan tree not producing, they have not fertilized it or tried to do anything to it. So that's just a little background on growing some pecans in the backyard. You can stop by the office. We'll get you some literature. You can pick out the varieties that you would like to try to produce. And my recommendation is stay away from the ones that require the most maintenance. So I think now we're going to go in and see what Susan is making out of pecans.
We're going to be talking about cranberries, and we're going to be making a cranberry pecan pie, and I hope you're going to like it. It's a very, very simple pie. It doesn't have any crust to it, so once we make all the batter and put it together, it's going to hopefully have that wonderful crust look that you would love. And not only that, but the cranberries make it so appealing as far as for the holidays. And this dish, you can eat it any time of the day. We found it in our work. We can eat it at lunch. We can eat it at supper. We can eat it even at breakfast. So this is a good little pie that we can make when someone's coming over and you're trying to appeal to somebody in something really nice as far as those cranberries go. Hopefully this is going to be a pie that you'll want to make. So let's start off with what we have so far in front of us. We do have, this is plain flour. This is a cup of plain flour, and I have it just in this one bowl because I'm going to end up mixing other things in this one bowl. First thing I'm going to do is mix the dry ingredients. This is 1 cup of sugar, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to it. We have to add a little bit of salt, so this is 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And then we're also going to add 1/2 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. And that is going to be the dry ingredients for this pie. So as you can see, this is pretty simple so far. I'm just going to mix this around to make sure we incorporate all the cinnamon, the salt, and the flour and the sugar all together, because we want to make sure when we add the cranberries and the pecans, we want to make sure they are going to be kind of covered with a little bit of this dry ingredients, because that just kind of helps it kind of mix around really well. So the next thing we're going to do is add our cranberries. This is a cup of cranberries. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to our mixture. Let me see if I can stack this to the side. And then we have chopped up pecans, and this is 1/2 cup, and you can see this doesn't look like a whole lot, but this is just 1/2 cup, and we're going to add those to it. And about 20 pecans make about, and that's about 1 ounce. So when you're trying to figure out from your recipe what you're trying to do as far as your pecans are, they about 20 pieces or 20 halves, that's going to make about 1/4 of a cup, and that's also going to yield around 196 calories for that much of your pecans. But remember, you're not eating the whole handful. But I will tell you on pecans that they are also cholesterol-free, unsaturated fat, and they are also, from studies show, that it can also lower your cholesterol. So they also say that just eating a handful of pecans every day could be a good thing. So you might want to put that on your list also during the holiday seasons. So what I'm just trying to do is to get some of the dry part of this on the pecans and also on the cranberries. So that's incorporated really well. The other things that I'm going to add is, this is 2 eggs already beaten up, and this is 1/2 cup of melted margarine, or you can use butter. And then we also need a little bit of flavor. So we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add that because I don't want to leave that part out. And to me, I love vanilla, so we want to make sure it adds to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add that part to it. Then we're going to add our little wetting ingredients so we can mix it up well. This is our 2 eggs that we have beaten up. And then we also have the butter. And this just mixed up together is going to make a really good crust, and it's also going to help those cranberries. They kind of float to the top, so it's going to look really, really pretty when the cranberries start baking. They also kind of puff out, so they're going to, I guess the word you could say, they're going to explode a little bit because they're going to be very moist compared to what they are in this stage right now. So as you can see, this was a pretty easy pie that I'm making, so I just want to make sure that I have mixed everything up really good. And you don't have to. I have chosen a pie pan to put this in, but you can put it in like an 8x8 pan to bake it in, so it's really up to you on what you want to do as far as the baking part of it. Now I do have a pie pan that I'm going to be putting it in, and also we do ask you to put some kind of spray or something in it to keep it from sticking. So as you can see, that was pretty easy. So I'm going to go ahead and add the cranberries, the pecan, and all this mixture. So we're gonna have a cranberry pecan pie before you know it. You will put this in your oven, and remember, every oven is different. So on the average, it needs to cook around 40 minutes. But I have found using different ovens that it may not take as long as 40 minutes, and it's on 350 degrees when you're baking it. So make sure that you do pay attention. I would say after the first 25 minutes, I would make sure that you pay attention to and look at your pie to make sure the cranberries are looking good, and it's firming up, and so it's looking really like it's getting done. So just pay attention to it when you're getting close to about that time. Now, one thing I like to do is, you can see when you pour in your cranberries in, it tends to all go to one side. So I want to make sure my cranberries are evenly done in this pie, and they're not going to move around. So whatever you do, as you move the cranberries around, you want to make sure that, I just like them to be, when people cut their pieces off, that they're getting a lot of cranberries and not one side of it, and also your pecans are kind of evenly done too. So, and I just think it looks pretty if you can just move your cranberries around just a little bit. So as you can see, that's pretty easy to make, and it's very, very pretty. Once it comes out, it's going to puff up. The cranberries are going to be spread out. So I'm going to put this in the oven and bake it at 350 for about 40 minutes. And we're going to come back, and Frank Hancock, our Agriculture Natural Resource Agent, he's going to try our cranberry pecan pie. We'll see you back in just a little bit. Welcome back to Garden Delights. We have Frank with us, and we're going to try that cranberry pecan pie. And I hope this will be a recipe that you're going to put on your list. So Frank, let's try it.
All right, I'm ready.
I am ready too.
I was fixing to say that doesn't look like a pecan pie.
Well, you know what? I know you talked about pecans or pecans, whichever way you want to say it. I'm trying to get this out good. But we'll get you to make sure it gets on your plate.
Okay.
But it does have it in there in that pie. So,
all right.
So tell me what you think. It smells good.
That's good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you think about the cranberries?
Cranberries are good too.
It adds a little something different to it, but cinnamon adds a little flavor.
I believe you could have this for breakfast.
I know, I think so too. I think you could eat it any time of the day, for sure, for sure. This will be a recipe that you'll want to try. It's really good. Texture is really good. It stays together well. Visit our website and see the recipe. And hopefully you will visit with us next time on Garden Delights.